Today on CityLine, critical conversations about domestic violence, how we can do more to support victims, and the resources available for survivors. Good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jessica Brown. In recent weeks, we've witnessed a series of heartbreaking headlines, acts of violence that have shocked the public, devastated families, and left advocates calling for change. In mid-April, former Virginia Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax shot and killed his wife, Serena Fairfax, before killing himself. Police say the couple was going through a complicated divorce. The next week,
we have 3 crime scenes just here in Shreveport.
A Louisiana father killed 8 children. 7 were his own. 2 women, including the gunman's wife, were also shot.
This is real, and this is the result when someone snaps.
In the days that followed, more tragedy closer to home. An award-winning UMass Amherst chef allegedly killed his wife, Emma McDonald, inside a campus hotel. Police say he confessed to beating her to death.
This is just shocking. Yeah.
And last weekend in Wellesley, police say 2 young children were killed by their mother.
The kids seem so cheerful, so positive, so happy.
Paperwork reveals the mother and father were in the process of getting divorced. The community left grieving the unfathomable loss of 6-year-old Ella and 7-year-old Kai.
It's just horrible.
These instances bringing attention to the violent acts that can be committed at home. And now is the time to turn heartache and anger into action. Joining me now, we have Stephanie Brown, the CEO of Casa Myrna. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about it here because Casa Myrna, we know it's Boston's largest provider of shelter and supportive services for survivors of domestic violence. As someone who works with survivors every day, when you see stories like this happening over and over again, what does that evoke for you?
Yep. I mean, first, heartbreak. I mean, it's heartbreaking, but it's also preventable. And I think that's what's maybe the hardest thing to see about this is that we work with survivors. We work with about 2,200 survivors a year, and every single one of them has the potential for escalating violence and to experience that. And so luckily they reach out and they're able to get some support so that we can provide some support and intervene before it gets worse.
Let's talk about intervention here. How does your organization work to prevent tragedies like these?
Yep. So we really think about it in 3 ways. So first, we provide prevention work. So we work with young people and men and boys about healthy relationships. Like, what does a healthy relationship look like? How can you be vulnerable and not aggressive? Like, how can you not be controlling? How do you be giving? How do you be a good partner? And we also teach young women and other young people how to have boundaries in their relationships and how to set expectations. And that really sets the foundation that none of us are taught about healthy relationships growing up. It sets the foundation for healthy relationships going forward. And then we also do awareness. So we want to make sure that anybody who could be in an abusive relationship, anybody who knows anyone who could be, knows where to get help. And then we provide assistance. So we provide lots of supports for survivors. We operate the Safe Link, which is the statewide domestic violence hotline. We have emergency shelter for people who need to flee immediately. We have counseling. We have attorneys who provide legal representation and help with restraining order, family matters, and immigration matters. We have housing advocates who help people find housing, help them obtain housing that they can afford and maintain it. We do crisis intervention. We work with children. So we provide holistic supports to survivors so that they can leave an abusive relationship if they choose to. They can figure out how to be safe, and then they can move forward in their lives and heal.
We have to pay attention also to the demographics of domestic violence.
Yes.
Who's most often affected here?
Yeah. So everybody's affected. Like there is no demographic that is immune to domestic violence. Like it happens everywhere. Mm-hmm. But we've also seen that women of color and Black women are at highest risk of domestic violence and domestic violence related homicide. And that's partially due to their marginalization in our community. And so they lack more resources for escaping. We often see survivors end up remaining in abusive relationship because the alternative, if they leave, is homelessness, because how do they afford housing of their own, especially in this housing market? And so we certainly see that women of color are at highest risk of long-term abuse and the abuse escalating than other women, but it affects everybody. And so similarly with LGBTQ plus folks, we see that that abusers are very good at using their already marginalized the fact that they're marginalized, like abusers use that against them, so that when they go to seek help, they feel like there isn't anybody on the other side to help them.
I mean, you're touching on this right now, but we know, financial stress, housing, discrimination, all can play roles here when it comes to domestic violence. Right. How do these factors make it harder for people to get out of an abusive situation?
Yeah. So we firmly believe that to get out of an abusive relationship and to be free of abuse, you need housing that you can afford and you need your own money. And so those are two things that abusers target very quickly. And so financial abuse is something that we see in every abusive relationship. And so that if you don't have control over your money, if your work is sabotaged, if your credit is ruined by your abuser, if you have an eviction history or poor landlord history because your abuser has done that to the household, then there are fewer ways for you to leave an abusive relationship. And so oftentimes, there are studies that show that when a survivor leaves an abusive relationship, they become homeless almost 30% of the time immediately. And so if a survivor has children, they have to decide, do I want to go into the unknown? Do I want to risk homelessness? Or am I going to stay where at least I feel like I have some control and I have a roof over our heads? And that's not a choice anybody should have to make.
It's a feeling of kind of being trapped in a situation, right?
Absolutely.
I want to talk to you also about the presence of a firearm in the home where there's domestic violence. Talk about the risk, and when it comes to that, the level of risk in those situations.
Yep. So having a firearm in the home increases the risk to partners by 500% of the abuser using that firearm. So there are ways that when we're talking to survivors that we do a risk assessment and and try to figure out like how lethal could this relationship be. And one of the biggest red flags that we have that this abuser could actually escalate to murder would be access to firearms. And so if they have access to firearms, they use them to threaten their victim at the very least, and then sometimes they use them on their victims.
Wow. 500% is a large number.
Yeah, it really is.
We know mental health plays a big role in the conversation when it comes to domestic violence. Yeah. How can we talk about mental health without using this as an excuse for violent behavior? Right. Because that's a choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Right. So mental health issues do not cause domestic violence. They may exacerbate the abusive tendencies, but they do not cause domestic violence. And in fact, what we see is that domestic violence makes survivors feel like they're crazy or that they have mental health issues, because one of the things that abusers does is they gaslight their victim. And so gaslighting is when you make somebody think that their reality is not real. Right. It's not true. And abusers, that's one of the first things that they do, so that victims are constantly questioning themselves, like, is what I experienced real? Is this really happening? Am I losing my mind? And so that's definitely something that we worry about for survivors. But so mental health issues do not create domestic violence. And domestic violence is a choice, like abuse is a choice. And I think one of the important things to note about domestic violence is it's a relationship where one person they use abusive tactics they're trying to maintain power and control over someone else by using a pattern of abuse. And so one sort of mental health outburst is not domestic violence.
Let's talk about the warning signs, because I think this is really important to look for, whether someone is a victim or you're a loved one of someone who may be a victim. Yeah. What should we be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we look for is isolation. This is almost the first thing that abusers do. And it doesn't always happen immediately, but abusers isolate their victims from all of their supports. So it may start with, I don't want to go over to your parents' house today. They don't like me. They make me feel uncomfortable. They judge me. Let's not go. And so instead of saying, I don't want to go, you should go anyway, they say, let's stay home. And so then over time, when you don't show up at Sunday dinners, when you don't show up at family events, your family starts to not look for you anymore. They don't pay attention. If you're isolated from going out after work with your friends. So all of those things abusers do. If your abuser tries to prevent you from going to, faith community events, by yourself, and that they're always with you, and that they're isolating you from potential supports, that's one of the first red flags that we have. Because what that means is when you do reach out for support or you do want to talk to somebody about what's happening, there isn't anybody there.
Right. Yeah, less options when
Yes.
you're removed.
Exactly.
When someone wants to seek help, it can be difficult to know where to begin, right? So what would you say is a good place to start?
I would say the first place to start is you can call Casa Myrna's SafeLink hotline. It's anonymous, it's confidential, we're open 24/7, so we have advocates who can call and talk through with you what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what might be happening. It's an opportunity to just sort of test, maybe test some language, I've got some questions, what's happening here? It's also a place for people who love someone who they think might be abused to call, to say this is happening in this person's relationship, or I'm worried about this person. What can I say to them? What can I do? And then SafeLink can connect folks to their local resource.
That's really important because it helps give you the language of even how to talk to someone about it if you see it.
Exactly, right.
Stephanie
right.
Brown, thank you so much
Yes.
for joining us and
Thanks
for the
for
work that
having
you're
me.
doing. Thank you.
Thank
I appreciate
you. Thanks
it.
for having me.
Coming up, understanding how intimate partner violence affects the brain beyond emotional damage, what new research reveals about the long-term impacts that often go undetected.